All right, everybody, welcome to Paravine's Into the Rift. Today, we're going to be talking about a whole lot of fun subjects, but let's get into it. Why is Amber not hosting the show? My name is Devin Young at Pyrotechnics. I'm going to be the guest host for today. And, of course, let's introduce our panel as well. We have Dave Troop, Chase Vossner, Stephen Wynn, and John Creighton. And we will be discussing a little bit of a wrap-up of Worlds, the final match. We're going to be talking about the offseason roster swaps, which is already becoming a massive thing in and of itself, and then we're going to get into the Q&A. So, right off the bat, guys, how are y'all doing?
Pretty good.
I can't complain. Worlds is fun.
Yep.
Nice Imagine Dragons concert. I mean,
yeah.
That was pretty sweet. Good job by Riot.
Yeah. How was
way
it?
Way better ceremony.
How was it live?
I feel so... Oh, yeah, how was it live?
Well, it put me on the spot for that one. It was pretty incredible. I would have loved a Warriors encore.
Mhm.
But they played on all the songs that I knew that they wrote. Actually, I didn't know a couple of songs were by them, and it was one of those awkward moments where you're like, "Oh, that's Imagine Dragons," but it really good.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic show live. A lot of fireworks, a lot of cool pomp and circumstance.
That conductor put in work. He really deserves his paycheck for that day. Just all the different orchestras that he was doing at once. I have no idea how those people do it. It's
Drums
an
were
insane
crazy
skill.
too.
Oh my gosh.
Drums are
yes.
actually my favorite part of the opening ceremony.
Yeah,
was
their
pretty good.
setup was so fast. They would drag things on stage like while they were introducing the players or like while the trophy was being held up, and they just like would run out there with the drum set and everything. Insane. It gets better every year. I was pretty impressed with Riot this time around.
Way better than last year's. Way better. And it was sick that OGN got to make the intro video for it too. OGN always does a good job with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the games were also much better than last year too. So, do you want to get into discussing those guys? We had one more than we did last year.
We did.
Team, technically the same team, made it a
little
little
bit
bit
closer.
farther.
That's a good thing.
3 years from now, Royal Club's going to be winning 3-2. It's going to be great, you know? Just slowly
Old
but
man guy
surely
with
inching
like a
their
long
way.
wispy mustache and beard.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, man.
He's gonna like be just a sage at that point.
He'll be battle scarred.
I think he already is,
Just
man.
random scars all over his face, even though his face has nothing to do with League of Legends playing, unless he plays with his bashes his head on the keyboard. But you know,
Well, he probably does that.
You know
He
what
probably
it
does
is?
that- probably does after those losses, to be fair.
They're really waiting until Uzi's old enough to drink the champagne after, you know. They're
There you
just
go.
pacing it.
There you go. That's definitely the thought. But I don't know. The games were closer than last year, but not really a whole lot. I mean, it was still a really one-sided stomp fest. It was never really like, oh, Starhorn Royal Club might win this series. It's kind of just,
Like, the first 10 minutes of the games were kind of debatable. Like, it could have went either way, but after 10 minutes, you know.
yeah. As soon as Samsung got the lead, it was over, basically.
Yeah,
Every
every single game, it just took that first big team fight. And really, it was Dandy, you know, he was rushing those mobility boots. And every game that they won, that was the first thing that he would go for. And he just has this amazing way of going around the map, finding the advantageous fight, pushing every lane in their advantage. And when White gets going in the early game, it's really hard to come back, especially when, you know, Insec is so easily countered because he has his two champions that he's really, really good with. And then he has some things that he kind of throws out there and kind of looks to see what sticks. And I think that's oftentimes when you're looking at a team that relies on such a good early game, if you don't have a jungler who can kind of fight in his way back with multiple different options, that's a problem. And I think that showed up in this series especially. And the only game where it didn't is where he pulled out his Rammus, which is probably the only thing that can match his speed to be wherever Dandy's going.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that game 3 a little bit too. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to the item builds, but particularly the interesting choices that he made to adjust his early game. He built a Madrid's Razors on top of his jungle tank item just so he would be able to clear faster after his early game ganks didn't get any kills.
I think that was almost desperation on Rammus, because if you don't get those kills early, like Rammus does not have good clear speed by himself, so you're kind of just in a real bad position there,
right.
Especially against somebody like Dandy, who basically read his mind the rest of the series. I mean, that game, Insect looked a lot better, but everywhere else you saw everything Insect tried to do, Dandy would be right there, kill him. Like, it was just every time they tried to make a play, White would turn it around, and it was usually because Dandy would just show up and be like, oh, hello. Or in game 1, it was just Dandy being everywhere first. So it's kind of interesting. He always seemed to know where he was. So I think that was more desperation than anything.
Vision and positioning was also a big part of those early games, especially. Imagine the number of wards placed.
A lot.
Oh yeah.
That's just the actual official stat is a lot.
Almost like Mono's the best support in the world or something. I don't know. It just gets this weird feeling. I mean, he's ever since he placed 88 wards in that first game of Worlds, they kind of set the pace for them, and that's where they took their advantage. Every time they went into a fight, they knew exactly where they were going and what fights they could pick and exactly what they would be facing. And Royal Club was playing on the back burner, and you cannot win a series that way. I don't care how good Uzi is, and he is very good. Like that bot lane, he and Zero put up good performances in every game. They were certainly not outmatched, and obviously in that third game we saw that Tristana just go crazy. But if you're not able to control your jungle, when Dandy of all people is able to come in and pick whatever fight he wants, and he can get Looper, who ever since I made a silly comment about how he's not the reason White tends to win games, has just gone on fire because of course he did. That's going to be a problem for you. And I think we knew that going in. I think we knew that the solo laners were going to be enough to do it. We knew that Mata was going to give them the vision that they needed, and we got exactly the series we were expecting.
It doesn't help that Starhorn doesn't really know how to win when they're ahead either. I remember last week, the semifinal game 5, when Insect was on Pantheon. They had a huge gold lead, and they had a huge dive comp, but they didn't have any deep wards. And against a better team, like Samsung White, they would have abused that. They would have baited you into dives and wrecked you. You need to have proper ward control at all points of the game, whether or not you're ahead, whether or not you're even, or whether or not you're behind.
Didn't they pick Pantheon into Janna as well?
That was really bad.
Yeah.
That was
Really bad pick.
Janna is like the ultimate counter to Pantheon. She can stop the stun, like when he jumps towards you. She can just blow you back as soon as you ult. It's like, why would you pick Pantheon into that? It's just blows my mind.
Yeah,
A little bit of desperation, maybe.
Yeah, because his Kha'Zix wasn't working.
Like Insect just reeked of desperation in that game. Like he just, I don't know. Like and the whole series really. Like he was just getting outclassed by Dandy. And I mean, maybe he was confident after the Rammus. He's like, I managed to get this to work. So maybe he felt a little bit more confident. And his game 5 with Pantheon last time kind of worked out. So maybe that's where it was coming from.
If we go back to last week, right? This is the one thing that I said. Like, if Starhorn want to win, they need to learn how to play Nocturne, because it is the ultimate counter to what White pick. Right, okay, so we look at the first rotation of the first game. They pick Twitch. What does Nocturne absolutely destroy Twitch? You no way getting away from them. As soon as you hit level 6, it's just kill. They took an Orianna. They're always going to pick Orianna as blue side because it's like the safest pick you can go with. Plus, Korn isn't exactly known for any special talents on specific mid laners.
He's very good on Orianna. That's one of the champions who played the most in the LPL.
Well, if his Fizz is legendary, then I've not seen it. I'm not the Chinese expert as such, but I've not really been impressed by Korn, to be honest. His Orianna was okay, but I don't think compared to Pon, it's like going to be, putting up a big threat, So he's always got to pick that. It's kind of safe, right? That's fine. Nocturne, Orianna, great synergy, can dive into a Jace, can dive into a Twitch, blow them up. Why not go for that? I mean, if you watched White this tournament, they're obviously going to pick a Jace. They're obviously going to pick a Twitch. You know what I mean? It's just like the perfect pick. Someone should be researching this.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Game 1 really mentally messed with them? Because for me, Game 1 was both teams. Like Starhorn played a protect the Uzi comp, right, with the Tristana, the Janna, and the Orianna, and then basically Samsung got all the champions that they love. They played Thresh. They played Thresh, they played Jace, they played Jarvan, they played a tanky utility top and Maokai for Looper. Like, they played everything that they love to play. And to me, that just seemed like, okay, both teams were just willing to let the other team play what they wanted to and see how that matchup goes. And getting stomped so hard in that first game, what was it, 24 minutes or something? Yeah. I think if you're going toe to toe with somebody and you just both pull out your ace in the holes, this is your bread and butter, and you just get schooled that hard, that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the series, right? In a very strong way.
I'm not sure how much it would have messed with them though. I mean, after game 2, Uzi was smiling after that loss, So I don't think it shook them up that hard.
The picks were horrible in the first two games. Though.
Yeah, the pick was
Like,
horrible in the first game to begin with.
What use is a Janna against a Poke comp? You know?
No.
A lot of
Like, yeah, for the Jarvan, maybe, right, that's fine, but like there's just got to get sieged at mid game and you can't do anything.
a lot of Starhorn strats historically have evolved. First off, let me preface this by saying pick ban phase in China is not particularly their strong suit. Mm-hmm. That being said, they got a lot of what they wanted in most of those games. I would say that the last game was probably their worst pick ban phase. They didn't try to deny too hard. What was really interesting is that they banned out Alistair 100% of the time, and Zilean, who I believe Pawn only played once in the whole tournament.
He did.
Zilean was really strong in that
patch. If I
patch.
recall correctly, I don't think he did that well on Zilean.
Yeah,
that was the one they lost
organizations.
against TSM, was it?
Yeah, his Zilean was really bad. He played it like the first. Did he play it like the very first game of the tournament?
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And it was so bad. That was like,
It doesn't matter if you're amazing on Zilean though. Like the ult is just way too strong right now. Like the champion is broken, on that patch, and so is Alistair because it's before the Alistair nerf on the auto attack or whatever.
Well, he was 100%.
You need to ban it, Like I wouldn't discredit them for that, but I would discredit them for their champion select overall. Like just especially the pick rotations, like they could have countered them so much better. I just felt like there were so many options that they could have went with, but they just didn't. And I don't know if that comes down to Chinese coaching staff don't put an emphasis on that part of the game, because it's just, I don't know, it's slightly bemusing, at that level to have such a poor champion select.
I mean, I think it's really hard to ban Samsung White in general. Like, okay, yeah, maybe you don't need to ban the Zilean because maybe the Zilean isn't some amazing thing for them. But who are you going to ban out? You're not going to ban out Looper. You're not going to ban out Dandy. You're certainly not going to ban out Pawn. I mean, every single one of these players is famous for having some of the deepest champion pools in the game. So it's when you're looking at so many different options coming at you, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I get the whole idea of the Orianna play it safe comp, but you only get to the mid-game team fight point if you're able to hold your own in the early game. And what we've seen from Samsung White this entire tournament is if you're relying on getting to the mid-game or the late game in order to get to the best part of your composition, good luck, because they don't let a lot of teams get there. And I think, you could say that, sure, there were certain parts of their picks and bans that didn't necessarily make sense, but I don't necessarily fault them for going for, trying to go for lanes that maybe could hold up at least a little bit in the early game, because relying too much on the mid to late, I think, would have been a death sentence for them.
And a big part of their strategy, Starhorn strategy versus Samsung's, of course, is how much emphasis their jungle has. I mean, and what Samsung did really effectively was, like you guys mentioned, ban Insec out, and the biggest competitive pick there was Rengar, and that's something that Dandy is very well known for.
Yeah.
And so is Insec, and that was, look at how many times each of them got that.
Well, Dandy's Rengar was insane that series. That game on Rengar, he was literally every single place, that every single time Insec made a play in that game too, and Dandy had Rengar, he was right there, right after, insta-death. Like, it was just, it literally felt like he was reading his mind. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, I actually, I believe there was an interview with Looper really recently. No, not Looper. I'm sorry, Dandy. And people often call Dandy the most, he researches his opponents, so he knows what he's always gonna do. But then he said that he doesn't actually research them that much. He just plays off instinct. That's really interesting, especially when you're talking about his Rengar game, because I wonder if he just thinks about what, in this situation, where's our team's weak spot? Where is Insec gonna try and gank my team? I'm gonna go there next. And I think he's just got a really good head for kind of thinking of what the other team would do.
It helps when you also have a great support in Mata who gives you the vision that you need to make those kind of calls.
Oh, sure.
I mean, when you have...
Those two together put down so many wards in the perfect places. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. You don't need instinct at that point. Then you just have you just have knowledge is what it comes down to there.
Yeah. Especially because he wards so much. Like Dandy, I'd put money that Dandy warded more than any other jungler in the tournament as well.
It's probably a safe bet. The whole team, was putting down a massive amount of vision. I mean, that game 1 was, I would say, even overkill.
Yeah,
But
probably.
they knew exactly where Insec was more often than not that game.
Yeah, that.
That's what happens when you snowball, though. Like, if you just put down a ton of wards, and what can the enemy team do? Especially when you've got a mid-game team comp, you know?
Well, and you think about, like, what did they actually get off that early game vision? I mean, they invested so much in those wards. I mean, yes, they won, they got leads, but you could have argued that they maybe could have done even more than that. They could have gotten a lot of early kills. Like, game 1 didn't have as much carnage as you would have expected.
No, you're right.
Well, what was that?
They kind of forced
The game
them off a
one-
lot of objectives, like hit them in her
They played denial.
Yeah.
It was almost like I can't believe they gave Twitch to Imp 3 games in a row. Like, that's his signature champion, and they just let him. Like, it took them till game 4. I mean, he was making plays mid lane. He was making plays on that Rise. Like, he was just doing everything on that Twitch. He was playing really well.
Like,
And the time
That's
So
the
if you
thing,
ban
why
out
not?
Twitch, he can get like almost any other AD carry and do just as effectively because he's really good. Like,
I thought he was.
And what
It
do
doesn't
you-
matter so much because you can shut it down. You can shut down Twitch. You just need to play it correctly. Like, I don't know, man. I just think it's just the way the ban picks went. Like, against the Twits, like, you need picks and you need mid-game picks so that he's not as effective because you want to group up a bit, you know, rather than have people splitting off and then getting picked off by the Twits. So it's like how you play against it and how you pick against it, you know what I mean? Rather than it just being like Imp's super good on Twitch and you can't allow him to have it. So there are a lot of ways to deal with it.
I mean, but I think it comes down to that whole White's vision game is so good. When Twitch is able to pick his points, when he knows when he has an enemy that's a little bit off, or when he knows that he can get in and out safely, that allows for a much more aggressive Twitch, a Twitch that's able to kind of make the plays that they need. And again, it comes down to that whole, okay, you want to ban Alistar and Zilean every game. That means you get one more ban. First game, they banned Rumble. Second game, they let Rumble go through. Looper went 7-0-10. And they banned, third game, that's, what do you do? I mean, then they started banning out Jace, in games 3 and 4 because Pawn was just destroying on that. And Pawn is a very, very good Jace. But if you're going to spend 2 bans as just automatic, we are not letting Alistar or Zilean through, you have to you're going to have to let Imp get that. And you just have to hope that your AD carry, who has been one of the best AD carries at this entire world, is going to be able to handle it. And, in the laning phase, at least, I think he certainly did fine. I think what ended up happening is just Vision game wins out, and Twitch with Vision is just very, very difficult to stop.
so are you saying you would rather have banned Twitch every game?
No, I'll say it like this. I think that Zilean, when you spend your ban on Zilean, which I disagree with, I think they should have let Zilean go through. Let Pawn beat you on Zilean because Pawn's going to beat you on most champions anyway. If he's going to do it on Zilean, that's fine. I was not impressed by his Zilean before this tournament, during this tournament. I'm fine with that. And that would have just given you a little bit more leeway where maybe you don't ban Twitch, but maybe you get, maybe you can focus on, that Jarvan that was killing you, or maybe you can even, you can kind of tailor what you think that White is going to do and actually use your bans to stop them from just getting every champion that they want. Because it felt like, White got to play the game that they wanted in every single game because they knew 2 bans were going towards things they weren't going to use anyway.
Well, the other issue is that.
Hold on.
Why not just deal with it? It's so easy to read. Like, we've said this, like, they've been playing it all tournament long. Why not have a strategy to deal with this? I mean, you seen it, it was a game 3 where they brought out the Braum. Braum Trist is, like, amazing against Twitch. Or Braum anything, because he blocks most of his ult anyway. Even though, like, I don't think the Twitch was a bad, like, something that you had to stop because it's so easy to shut down. They just, you know what I mean? I think we're way off what really won the games, and it was down to Royal Club not dealing with the strategy properly. It wasn't to do with Dame having comfort picks, you know what I mean? There's so many counters out there they could have used that they didn't use, and even counter picked themselves some games. You know, Pantheon into January, we said. You know what I mean? It's entirely down to the ban pick phase that they played wrong. Well, I wouldn't even say the bans because, you know what I mean, whatever. It was played out the same most of the tournament by most teams with the Alistar Zilean. So it's just purely down to the fact that these guys need someone to tell them what to do. And I don't know if the coaching staff are failing them, or I don't know if they're just deciding to do their own thing when they get into the game, but it's it's really bad. That was all I seen from it.
Okay. Also, you're putting so much emphasis on the ban phase. Like, they could have banned this and this. Okay, Alistair has a 100% pick ban rate in Worlds. I don't remember how many games total, but there was something, I think he got picked 4 times, 75% win rate, and got banned every single other game. Something like 70 to 80 games. You're going to let Alistair go? No, you're absolutely not. Zillion, yes.
The issue.
Pawn Zillion was not that great. But remember, he played Zillion, the game that Imp played Tristana, and flash jumped 1v5 into the back of the team. There's no way Pawn's going to be able to get the ult off. When he plays Twitch, he's going to be in the back line. Where Pawn's going to be in the back line. And we don't even have to have Pawn playing Zillion. You want to put one of the best ADs paired up with Zillion? Okay, Zillion may not be the number 1 ban. I might agree with that. But I can definitely see why they banned Zillion. And I would not risk that. Third of all, they banned the third pick was like the third ban was constantly varied, kind of depending on how the series flowed. They eventually started banning out Jace. That makes sense. But at the same time, they get 3 bans per side, and there are so many like really top tier heroes that you cannot let through that many of them.
The only thing that I have to say about that, I agree with you in every instance, except the Alistair ban. The problem for Royal Club was that normally it's always red side that has to ban Alistair, because otherwise blue side will first pick it. And the issue was that they had to ban Alistair in every game because Korn can't play it.
I agree.
Exactly.
Or Cola can't play it, rather. So
I agree. That's an issue.
That's the issue. That's the issue.
And
that
was my point. My point is that my point is that when you have to spend 2 bans on that means you can't spend them on anything else, which means that, and I understand, John's point that, yes, there are ways to deal with Twitch and whatever else. But guess what? There wasn't a single team at this tournament who could play well against White when White was playing the type of game they want to play. White playing that vision game where they have those kind of champions, they can roam around the map and get the picks that they want, beat everybody. I don't think there's a single team in the world, we just saw it. There isn't a team in the world that could compete in that straight up way. So I think if you're trying to beat a team that is going to be superior in those kind of tactics, you have to find a way to throw them off that game. And the way you do that is by not letting them get those champions in the first place. I understand why the Alistair ban had to come in. I understand that, you can make a good case for the Zillion, but it does lock them in. And it does mean that given how many champions White can kind of play with, White got to do what they wanted this series. And when White gets to do what they want, of course they're going to win the series. That's my point.
Okay.
They did that quite a lot the entire time, too.
Like, I was just saying, like, you kind of made it sound like there was a better solution to it. I don't think there was a better solution to it, because everyone's champions pool are so deep that they can pull off the same kind of strategy, even if you ban out 1 or 2 different champions.
Yeah. No matter what you're doing, you're basically taking a gamble. Like, there's nothing you can do that's 100%, right? Like, you could try. The only thing that sucked, like I said, is that they couldn't play Alistair, because that literally gave White a free ban and took 1 ban away from them in 2 of the games.
Exactly.
Which it could have been a little bit better.
No, yeah, I agree. If the Alistair thing is a problem, and I agree with that. I'm just saying that White's champion pools are so...
It's massive. It's massive.
It's less the fact that it's massive. It's the fact that all the champions they play complete the same strategy. They complete the same goal. It's not as if they can play deep dive champions or poke champions. The champions they play are so versatile enough that they can complete the same goals every single time, whether or not they get the same comp every single time. That's White's strength. And I think that's worth highlighting, especially when we're talking about the pick man's face.
Okay. Quickly, since we're going to move into other topics soon, let's do a quick TLDR of each of the games, because we've kind of been meandering around all of them in just sort of a general overview of the performance of each team versus each team. But why don't each of you guys take one of the games and break it down in order?
Well, I can start with game 1. It was really simple. In my opinion, it was really, really simple. Dandy went to every single lane. He went top, then he went mid, and then he went bot. And he got a kill everywhere. And you put White ahead, and that's the end of it. Like, then White just snowballed everything Royal Club tried to do. Like, they did their usual Royal Club, let's contest objectives when we shouldn't. And White just closed the game in 24 minutes. Like, I don't really know what much.
They took double TP and didn't focus bot lane. They allowed the pressure to get to their solo laners who are running teleport. That is the issue. They took a Janna support, and then like if you took a Braum in game 1 and you went ham on the bot lane with Trish Braum, like with double TP, like where does the pressure go? Where does Dandy go? Is he still going to go camp top? Is he still going to go camp mid when they're actually TPing down bot because that's where all the pressure is? You know what I mean? Like they're not using the comps properly. It's just like Orianna was a sitting duck in mid. She got ganked. Probably ganked.
Well, like I said earlier, they both just played the comps they wanted to play, right? Like White got some of their favorite champions from the tournament, and they let Uzi and Royal Club play protect the Uzi comp, you know, and it was just a straight up, we're gonna play what we want, you play what you want, we're just gonna smash you in the face anyway. So that was game 1 in my opinion. It really was. The finals, I mean, we've kind of meandered around them, but I thought most of the games, game 3 was really interesting, but the rest were very straightforward.
Okay.
I mean, I thought game 2 was interesting as well. I'll take that one. I mean, I felt that, you know, that was a game where for the first 11 minutes, it was pretty back and forth. We saw a couple fights, the key fights in the bot lane where Royal Club's over-aggressiveness really got to them. And you saw Looper. I mean, Looper's probably the best Rumble in the world right now. I 7-0-10. I don't know what else to say about that. Dandy, it's absolutely insane. Every equalizer was perfect. Every single time he would just zone out all these fights, and there was nothing. Royal Club was they had no idea what to do. They had no way of handling it. And I don't particularly think Mundo is great in this meta. I don't know what Mundo is really doing for them, and as far as, you know, compared to the utility of some of the other top laners right now. But, you know, Looper was pretty much able to take whatever he wanted from there. And Dandy, 6-1-10 on Rengar. His Rengar's legendary. Pawn's probably the only person who can make Talon look good this world so far. It was nice to see Talon actually work out for once. But yeah, I mean, it's once that second fight in the bot lane went wrong for Royal Club, White just steamrolled from there.
All right, who wants to take game 3? I know you guys are just so excited for that one.
Whoa, that was
Some
not as good as Camille's grandfather clock in the background, I have to say.
yeah, I missed the grandfather clock. It was comfy. But yeah, which game 3 was fascinating because Royal Club managed to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, sure.
But it also, yeah, go for it, Steve.
Game 3 was interesting in the sense that just because of the Rammus pick for me, because Rammus is easily abusable in his early jungle, and J4 should have been able to beat him out. No, okay, that's actually not the issue. The interesting thing is actually the Singe, because Samsung White probably wanted to end out 3-0, and the interesting thing about Singe was the fact that Singe is actually a good matchup against Maokai, because Singe can do more damage on Maokai early in the lane, like level 2, level 3, and then because his poison is a toggleable spell, it doesn't proc Maokai's passive. One of Maokai's biggest strengths is that he can trade better, because a lot of top laners in rotation in the current meta use a lot of spells. So when they trade and then he heals up, that's why Maokai kind of works. But then you can't do that against Singe, because you have to proc your own passive now, other than Singe flinging you. And he doesn't even have to fling you. He can walk up to you, auto you, toggle his poison if he wants, and then walk away. And then, especially when he hits level 6, you'll be able to sustain that really easy. But the issue is that Singe is not good against Royal's team comp. Good against the Maokai, not against the team comp, because they all had a lot of CC. The taunt, the Twisted Advance, the Rune Prism, and the Tristana's ult, the Buster Shot, and Braum can peel against Singe too. Singe can't do anything in the team fights, even if he wins laning phase.
Yeah, Rammus too, right?
Yeah, I said the taunt. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
No,
Wasn't it the gank in mid lane? I think it was a counter gank by Insec on the Rammus that basically won the game, where Maokai picked up like 2 or 3 kills. Like after that, Maokai was just so big, man.
Oh yeah. Because they
I think
can set
that's
up
wrong.
things really well with their comp.
Like that's the thing. Like Rammus is really linear, but when you counter gank with him, he's actually pretty decent. You know, like if you wait off at the side and then roll in instead of just like try to power through lanes. You know what I mean? Because when you've got the mobility boots and the roll, obviously it's like you're into lane like that. So if you can sit off at the side and wait for Dandy to gank, then it works really well.
Yeah, true. I mean, Samsung White's comp was just not strong enough because they fell behind a little bit early. And then they didn't have a wave clear to stall out for Imp. And then there was been too much that it was kind of a clinic after that because they had no way to stop it. So, we're going to move on to game 4?
Yeah.
Want to take it, John? He's muted. Uh-oh.
Oh, Ricky, sorry.
There you go.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Do you want to go ahead and take game number 4? It's actually
Game 4,
the
was
quickest
that-
game, by the way.
Was that the game where
Pantheon.
Royal Club were up like 3-0 at the start? Like, it was a Pantheon jumped in, down bot lane, they got the gank. It was like the two solo laners were bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that game? Yeah, so they were like 3-0 up, it was looking good. But obviously the Pantheon pick into the Janna wasn't the greatest, and that came back to bite them because Insec, as usual, when they get ahead, he over ganks, and he over ganked a Janna that was going to deal with him, you know what I mean? And then White just took a few kills, I think it was, and then just rolled the game, which Royal Club should have done, but obviously White had the answers to it through picks again.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Well, we might actually end the section perfectly on time, but we have a little bit of time. Do you guys want to talk just about Samsung as a team? I mean, this is our World Championships. This is our World Champion team. It's another Korean team, but of course, I don't think anyone expected anything different. Anyone who was watching all the major regions this year, kind of was saying, no, Korea is still far and away the best. Samsung definitely proved that. And what do you think about this white team? I mean, this is pretty dominant performance, dropping 2 games the whole tournament.
What really scares me about Korea is somehow it's not just that like the region is good, but somehow they manage to produce this one team every year that's not just good. Like they destroy everybody. Like it's not like SKT last year was very similar, and then this, you know what I mean? Like I guess it was a little bit closer because it was they had a good series in the semis, but this one was just
their one weakness was always Samsung Blue, and they completely crushed them.
Yeah, it was a complete massacre.
Definitely some demon slayed for them this tournament. I mean, this is a team that has always been said they've got all this talent, and we have, they're great on paper, but then they make silly decisions in the late game. They throw things away, and they've just never lived up to their potential. That's kind of the feeling, the sentiment that's been behind them for a long time. And this was them finally saying, you know what? No, we're going to show up here, especially after season 3 and the whole group stage, everything else. This year, they all showed up. They all decided that this was, we were just going to hammer everyone hard and fast, just win the early game so hard that people cannot come back, that we cannot throw those games with our mid to late game decisions. And I don't know how sustainable that is. I mean, eventually, obviously, it's hard to win that dominantly forever. Eventually, teams are going to be able to find a way to force them to the mid and the late game. But for now, they look like a very terrifying team. And if I'm the Samsung organization, I do everything I can to lock these guys up and just keep this unit together. Because if you can make the shot calling work and fix some of those mid to late game issues during a time when everything is already running perfectly and you have the time to focus on other things, this team could become a powerhouse and maybe for once return to Worlds the year after winning it, which would be nice to see because we haven't seen a team do that yet.
I think they could make it back to Worlds. I don't know how dominant they'll be for the next year for Korean League, because when you kind of trace through the history of the Korean teams that make it to World, and then the Worlds after, right? So we have Season 2, we have Najin Sword and Zubu Frost. Neither Frost and Sword both kind of collapsed at one point. I mean, Sword did technically make it back to Worlds. They did. But they had a different roster, and they won OG in winter, 2012-2013. Lost in group stage of spring, lost in group stage of summer, made it through World, through the circuit points and NOB. And then they actually arguably gave us the best series in Worlds last year, Sword versus SKT. But, I don't know, even after that, they just fell apart. They never really came back. Frost fell apart really quickly after Worlds. I don't know, I just think teams that are at the top in Korea, especially, have a tendency to not stay at the top because it's easier to chase a team than it is to stay at the top. Because when you chase a team, that fuels your development as a team, that fuels your desire to make your strategies, be the best. because you're not the best, right? I mean, SKT, they fell apart too. I mean, kind of. I mean, I might say that they might go back to Worlds. I don't think they'll be nearly as dominant next year.
Yeah. Fair.
Here's a hypothetical for you guys. Compare this year's results and this year's expectations to last year, and in particular with the winners. I mean, SKT's hype versus everyone. I think everyone in Korea kind of thought White was the much stronger team out of the Samsung. I don't think anyone really expected Najin to really do that well, but they may not have also expected them to fall flat. But compared to how Samsung was expected to perform versus how they ended up performing, how do you think that that matches up against what happened last year with SKTK?
I think that it's like White just had that demon to burn, and this year they really came in showing like, hey, we're actually going to do this year. And I think people still expected. I think more people before the tournament still thought Blue was going to win, whereas SKTK was kind of the favorite. You know what I mean? Like Monty was already hyping that team right from day one. So I think that's a little bit of a difference, because I believe if you ask most people who watched Korea before the tournament started, before they watched a single game, you would have thought it would have been Blue, just because if you're going off history, right? Blue had always won in the best of 5 series, so you would have gone with that. Yeah, that's true.
A key difference.
That is true, but it didn't even get there this time, right? It was just kind of distracted. So I think that would be the difference I would draw from this year and last year. The SKTK was the team expected to win, whereas I know I was calling Blue before the tournament started.
We all
I think a lot of the experts were saying White, but this is why, like, as we discussed the last time, like, the main thing that we didn't take into account when people were saying Blue was that we didn't take into account the fact that this patch had been played so long that there was nothing new for them to bring out. You know what I mean? There was no room for real innovation as such. You know what I mean? And White had sussed out what was best for them for a long time, you know?
Also, one big strength for White coming back to Worlds was the fact that I know there was an interview somewhere. I think it was somewhere in Ocean winter. The coaches said that they dramatically changed the practice schedule for the Samsung teams because of how bad Ozone/White did in Worlds last year. Where they said, I believe it was you had to practice 1 to 2 new champions, any kind of champion. Like, I think that's where they came up with Nidalee Lucian. That was the start of it. They had to practice like 2 champions that were not in the meta, and then that's how they kind of turned things around. Whereas SKTK kind of did the same thing over and over again, and then people kind of figured out what to do. Sure, you can say that Bengi regressed, whatever, but you can't deny how good the Samsung teams are with their coaching.
For sure.
Now,
I think
speaking
Faker
of...
was still bringing out new stuff. He was always bringing out stuff. Like Zillion, Zeraf, he was the first to bring them out, was he not? Or he was playing them in solo queue a lot.
Faker did play Zillion, but talking about SKT and what's been going on with them as well, and this will lead into a much wider discussion, but roster swaps, guys. It's off season. It's time.
Yes.
There have been. I mean, I thought the mid split thing was getting a little bit crazy, but wow, did we get a lot? And SKT was one of the earlier ones where we have now Piglet and Pumendu off the team. But let's go a little bit closer to home here first. Let's talk NALCS right now. The newest thing, of course, Zion Spartan is a free agent. Cutie Pie announced that he's going to retire as just to play for fun, probably streaming. That's massive change for Dignitas.
Yeah, it's a weird. I'm not really sure where they're going with this. I mean, we've talked about Dignitas in the past, and we've kind of pointed out that this is a team that's always been built on their camaraderie. This is a team that loved to play together. These are players that loved being together. And you had, they were a team that you really, when you thought of them, you thought of the Low Jack commercials and the I'm a Cutie Pie streams and the I love League of Legends, those kind of moments, or the Prophet Crumbs even at this point. So to see I'm a Cutie Pie and Skara and, Zion Spartan to a certain extent, that one I think was more just, I don't know how much of a fit he was with that team ultimately. But with I'm a Cutie Pie and Skara especially, it really seems like Dignitas is making a concerted effort to change that kind of identity, to take this more seriously and to try to be a team that doesn't just stay in the LCS, but actually tries to win something. And an interesting decision. I mean, as someone who is always kind of rooting to see the best play all the time, I'm personally in favor of it. But I also understand, like, if you're a Dignitas fan, you know, maybe staying in the LCS was enough if you got to keep the personalities and whatever else of that team. And if you're really a diehard Dignitas fan, this is going to be a very different type of team, whatever happens. And for all we know, this is not the end of it for them, because now that two big names are out the door, I genuinely have no idea what they're going to try to be going for next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
The thing is, they do not spend a lot of money on Zion and Shifter as well. Like, that's a lot of money just walking. That's a lot walking out the door, a big investment. So how much have they got left to bring in? You know, like people of that caliber.
Well, I mean, I'm a Cutie Pie makes them big time streamer money. I mean, that's been their thing. They've never suffered for money because their brand does such a good job of making money for them, selling gear and everything else. So I don't think they're as worried strapped for cash as other teams might be.
But he's not going to be part of the organization anymore, right? Like, he didn't resign.
Let me pull this up really quick and just absolutely confirm. It said he's stepping down from the team to pursue other opportunities. You can put that in air quotes if you want, but it's not confirmed whether or not he'll stay on and just stream for money and whatnot. I mean, he'll definitely be streaming. That's Cutie Pie's thing, but whether or not he'll be doing it under a Dignitas brand is another story.
Why would he do it for them? Why would he give up any – like, now his fan base doesn't care if he stays with Dignitas, right? He's going to get the exact same number of streamers every day or viewers every day anyway. So
he'll get more if he goes to TSM.
Oh my God.
Too soon.
I'm sorry. I just drove a heart.
Rumor mill is churning.
Jungle
I'm just
Cutie Pie.
saying, statistically, if you join TSM Streamer Network, your views go significantly up. That is not saying that he ever would or anything else. Do not quote me on anything. I'm just saying the statistics show that if he wanted to go somewhere to increase his bottom line as far as streaming goes, the only place I could think of off the top of my head that would significantly increase his audience count is the TSM organization. That's all I'm saying.
All right, well, I think there's no possible follow-up to that. So let's move a little bit forward in the lineup stuff. I mean, we can also talk about Zion Spartan and the hole that leaves as well. I think, touching on Cutie Pie too. I mean, what is Kiwi Kid going to do now? Are they gonna stick with him? This is all speculation, of course, but
that was my question when this all happened, because I don't know what the benefit is to keeping Kiwi Kid around as a support of Cutie Pie's.
What did he play before? Was he a top laner?
Top lane.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he goes back to top to replace Zion.
That's if you're looking at North America, what does North America have a ton of in their challenger scene? Bot lane talent. They've got supports and AD carries. They do a better job of doing that than any of the other Western regions, I would say. So you can make that case. I wouldn't be necessarily against it. I don't think, as far as what. So then you're looking at Kiwi Kid, Crumbs, and Shifter. I don't know what identity you have with that. I mean, they're kind of, that's a team that doesn't necessarily gel in any immediate way, and I'd worry. I guess Crumbs would be the captain of that. Like, what do you?
Yeah. Well, they can kick. They can kick, but here's the thing: is people are confused about this 3/5 rule. It doesn't mean that they have to keep 3 of their 5 players. Dignitas owns the spot, not the players. So they can kick Kiwi right now, which they should do, by the way. And then they can even kick Shifter if they don't like. I don't think that would be a mistake, but they could do it if they needed to, or trade him for something, or
sign and trade.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go traditional sports. Just sign and trade them, get some value out of it. Just spot them out.
But here's the thing: is what the rule says is that you can't bring in 3 people from the same other team. So if they bring in people, they can only bring in 2 people from another team at any one time. So they can only pick 2 people off the same challenger team or the same other LCS team. So they'd have to build their team of at least 2 other teams, basically. But they can do it. There's no reason for them not to. I mean, the only reason Kiwi stayed is because Cutie, basically, they had good synergy and he didn't want to kick anybody. Blah, blah, blah. But now that that's out the window, you might as well actually try and make the best team you can.
I just think it's kind of weird or unfortunate that those 3 have inherited the Dig curse. Because every season, Dig does really, really well at the beginning. With a different roster each time, and then they plummet and fail and crash and burn really, really hard at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's because they're not competitors, right?
Well, I'm sorry?
It's because they aren't. That team was never really traditionally competitors. Like they were guys like QtPie who were playing for fun. The people who took it really seriously by the end of the season were much in better shape.
I don't know if it was because they got lazy, though. That was the thing. I think somehow these same problems keep kind of showing up within each split. Their synergy, or whatever you want to call it, somehow goes out of whack at the end. I mean, Shifter goes big at the beginning of the season for Dig, and then he kind of progresses to playing like kind of hiding under his tower, hiding behind the team, protecting his KDA, I don't know, like somehow the communication in the team does not work out at the end.
Well, speaking of curses, they're not the only team that has that reputation. We've got another roster swap over on that particular team. Cop is out. Everyone knows that, of course. He's going to Curse Academy, but where do they fill that hole? They did the whole Pokemon graphic, like who's that AD carry? I mean, it's not official yet, but there have been a couple of speculations. One of them, people are saying Piglet, which was seemed to be the front runner, and now there's news out of what is it? I think Daily Dot just had said Forgiven is the likely candidate.
He said on his Ask FM that he's got a new team lined up or something. There was good news coming, so it could be him. I don't know if it's that team specifically, but it would make sense.
Okay.
Either of them are going to be a huge upgrade for Curse, though. That bot lane is going to, no matter what now, Curse has if either of those are true, it doesn't even matter which one. Curse's bot lane is very, very scary.
Well, it got much scarier when Expansion moved on to it.
Comes in as well, instead of Boy. That guy's pretty good.
Yeah,
he's on Cross Academy, isn't he?
I mean, here's the thing about Cop. He was fine. He was aggressively fine. He was never going to win you a series necessarily. He was never, he didn't necessarily go out of his way to lose you some. He'd get his KDA, he'd keep himself safe, and he wouldn't die. But because he was so passive, you would tend to not do so well in the early game. You'd give up those first couple dragons, and Curse as a team had to build their entire identity about playing from behind and waiting for your opponent to make a mistake. And we've seen here that, especially when you're playing top teams, they don't make mistakes sometimes. You can't just play that way and hope that they screw up. And I think that, with Cop, we had, 3 years of the Cop experiment. We saw him with every single support you can imagine under the sun, and it didn't work. So for me, this is just, finally, it's nice to see that they're finally being able to say, look, we like you. We understand that you work hard, but you're not the guy. We need to find someone who could be. And either Piglet or Forgiven could be that guy, and especially paired up with a guy like X Special who's got the experience there. I'll say this, I'd feel a little bit better about it if it is Piglet first of all, because Piglet I think is the better AD carry. But second of all, I'm a big fan of the Bill Simmons knuckleheads theory. You don't want to have too many knuckleheads on the same team. And both Forgiven and X Special have both had, people talk consistently about passive aggression and personality issues, whatever else. Is that a team if they're, let's say, 10 and 15 going into the last, super week of the season or something like that? Do you want those personalities bashing heads? Is that something you feel comfortable with? I don't know. I feel like there's, making a team is more than just putting talented pieces together. And that's something I would at least consider before they locked in Forgiven, especially because there is a lot of really good marksman talent there. Though, again, I should be very clear here, Forgiven is incredibly talented. And they would not be they would be an upgrade in either of those cases.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about some other vacant spots that are already, fairly well known. Everyone always says North America has no jungle talent. Well, there's two teams that are looking to fill that. TSM, of course, amazing, dropped off of that one. And the other German jungler in the NALCS, Dexter, has been gone from CLG. We are already been covered the departures of those particular players. But filling in, I mean, where do these two teams go from here? We have already heard that TSM has been courting Santorin from Coast. He's grandfathered in, so he's covered under the 3/5 in NA requirement. But if they don't get him, if Coast does everything they can to keep him, what does TSM do? What does CLG do?
I think CLG's in a much better position for this, right? Because they have the option to potentially move Link to jungle, which I've heard. I don't know if there's any credit to that.
That worked really, really well last time too.
It didn't, but hey, they could maybe they could actually get Zion or Shifter and just finish the poaching from Dignitas. Who knows? Put that on CLG. That would be an upgrade for them. TSM is a little bit of a harder position because if they can't pick up Centaur, then they actually have to pick up somebody from NA, right? They have no other option. They're maxed out on their foreign import players.
I mean, who are their best bets, like Smithy?
You could take a bet. You could take a bet on him.
No, how does that
would be
work?
random.
You can take in a foreign import from another team, but you can't.
It's because he's been playing in Challenger. The way they implemented the rule.
Like, how does Lustboy and Bjergsen still count as foreigners, but they could join another team and not count as foreigners?
Well, they count as foreigners.
Lustboy does count as a foreigner because he came after the clause.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Bjergsen doesn't.
They're exempt.
Bjergsen will get.
That's what it is, right?
Bjergsen counts like a year from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next year.
Okay.
Yeah, because it matches the residency law.
He's
So
been
a
here for
year from now,
So they can bring in one player.
Next,
Like
they
foreign.
need next year.
Next year.
For season
Yeah.
6.
They can bring in. Yeah.
What?
It is a North American.
Man, that's confusing.
Yeah.
It needs explaining. Like,
Okay.
I don't understand it fully.
The residency rules that they're putting in say you have to have lived in the region for at
2
least
years.
2 years. Bjergsen has lived here for 1, so he has to finish a second year of living here before he is seen as a resident.
Okay, so he's still a foreigner
still a
in their
foreigner.
eyes.
But then,
Yeah.
which it's interesting because Santorin has obviously not been here for 2 full years, but he's still grandfathered in. So I don't. There's a
No.
Is
weird
it
exception
different for
there.
the Challenger series? I don't
Yeah.
actually.
No, it's the same.
No.
I'm fairly
the
certain
same
it has
rule.
to do with transferring teams. So, for example, let's say
Yes,
Bjergsen
that
went
makes
to
sense.
mid somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Would
But
be
that,
able to go to another team and not count as a foreigner because he was transferring.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a really
I mean,
weird loophole. I mean, it's because
Oh, okay.
Riot implemented this rule somewhat retroactively. I think because they saw there was a lot of talent flowing across and they didn't mind it wholly, but they didn't want an entire team to swoop in. I guess LMQ was okay, but they didn't want it to happen again.
Well, it's been really messy too, right? Even if you look at the LMQ thing, because half the ownership's going on, like
Well,
there's ownership
that's
disputes in
another
China.
problem, but that's
That's
also a China thing.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
China thing, yeah.
there's a lot of business that gets shady.
Yeah. Well, that's just the problem when you don't have a rule like that in place, right? There's nothing to stop. That's kind of been Riot's most of their rules. They've kind of been learning things as they go, so they have to make most of the rules in response to something that happens instead of anticipating something like that happening.
That's been their MO for a long time. That just is kind of how Riot acts in terms to esports.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, but to get to your central point, yeah, I think if you don't get Santorin, the pool of potential junglers out there that are available in North America is really weak right now. I mean, that's something we've known about North America for a while.
It's perception.
I mean that's the perception, and maybe you could say, you could throw out like a Nintendo and say, look, he's still one of the top players in the Challenger ladder, and sure, he had
Ripper's
that one
just like,
mental head case.
don't go there.
Don't
he
even
looks
go
good
there.
if you watch his stream, he looks good.
Don't
man.
start. Don't. Okay.
Okay, but if you're going to say no to that, you got to say no to Smithy and all those guys for the same reason. If you're not getting Santorin, you're not getting any Sherbet.
Okay.
You're
Here's
basically trying out all those guys. At this
Here's why I'd rather bet on Smithy than Nintendo, because at least Smithy has shown that he can play at the top of the LCS level. Nintendo has played sure that too. Nintendo has played LCS, and come on. That last split was so painful. Seems like a nice guy. Nothing against him, but TSM has repeatedly said they want to win Worlds. You can't win Worlds with
Look at the Challenger
Nintendo. Come on,
he had
Chase.
before that. Look at Coast during that offseason before they had qualified for the LCS. They were in the NACS, not the NACS, the NACL, the North American Challenger League, and they were dominating. And you want to know why? Because Nintendo was the best jungler of all those guys at that point. Better than what Teammate had, better than what what any other challenger team was doing at that time. Now, granted, that was pre-LMQ, but he looked very impressive. And then he got just completely destroyed in the first couple weeks of the season, and mentally he just wasn't there. And I get that. That's a big problem, especially with the amount of pressure that a team like TSM gets. That's a problem. But at this point, you're picking, okay, which guy do you want to take? The guy that you know is going to work hard but could be a mental head case if he's not treated properly in Nintendo? Or do you want the guy in Nick Smithy who openly said, yeah, I didn't really work after Season 3. I did not work hard, and that's why my skills deteriorated. Does that make you feel better? Is that the statement that makes you feel more secure about the jungling? I mean,
if he's remotivated,
I guess.
I personally, I never saw Nintendo. Yes, he did very good in Challenger, but and even though he does well in NA solo queue, I just don't see.
And he did good in Season 3. He was very good in Season 3.
That was pre-Medios, pre-Dexter, pre-everybody who's good at the jungle playing jungle in North America, basically. There was no good jungle in North America at that time. So, you know what I mean? This was the era of St. Vicious. So it's nothing bad or a game. Like, he seems like a nice guy. I'm sure he can play in the NALCS. I'm not saying that. He can play in the LCS. I believe that. But I don't believe that TSM, as a team that brands themselves as a team that wants to win worlds, should settle for Nintendo when he hasn't displayed that he can dominate the LCS. If he dominates next split, then I'll consider it.
I'll give Nintendo
That's all.
I really can't. It's not in my brain. TSM Nintendo, please.
All right. Well, enough about NA because I can tell John's bored. Let's move over to the EU side of things. Jump a pond here.
He actually just doesn't want to talk about Nintendo.
Yeah, I know that too. But biggest news.
I'm the only one who ever wants to talk about Nintendo. It's fine.
Candy Panda is no longer on SK Gaming. Should we have a moment of silence for this?
No, he's back.
Anyways, so he's gone. Another 80 carry bites the dust. So where does SK go from here? Because this is a team that, they had a really good chance this Worlds, but kind of shot themselves in the foot in a couple of ways.
Reckless.
Things happened.
Everyone wants a bit of reckless.
Forgiven.
There you go.
Pick up Forgiven.
Forgiven's the answer. Reckless is signed till 2015. He's not going anywhere.
Pick up Forgiven.
Get the money, man.
Him up.
You're not buying.
Fnatic.
Fnatic doesn't give a crap, man. Fnatic makes enough money. They're like, no, we want our good player to actually stay. I don't think I think the price is going to be $1 billion. You want Reckless? Give me $1 billion. That's what I would say.
I don't think
everyone would say that.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, do you want me to pull the Mr. Evil graphic for you?
Well, hey,
that's one of those gifts on hand,
That would be an interesting team. That would be a very, very interesting team. The toxic team of death.
Yeah, someone linked that in the chat, by the way, just so people know what we're actually talking about.
Because that gift didn't even include that Smithy's back. Smithy's unbanned.
Oh yeah.
So, Smithy's unbanned now, boys. Like he can play again. So is Nuke Duck.
Speaking of toxic, Svenskeren.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna throw the name out there and see what you guys make of it.
That was stupid, but hey, he's really, really good.
He is. He's also a liability.
Do you know what?
Do
you know what you do? Do you know what you do? You put a sports psychologist, or you get your coach to actually.
You have a sports psychologist.
Yeah.
Get him to babysit him. Get him to literally babysit this guy. Like, remove his access.
When they're sex toys and just put it in his mouth.
Remove his.
Yeah, just muzzle him.
You're not allowed to speak. I don't do anything.
You can muzzle him. Trust me, they haven't been willing to, but you can muzzle him the same way a creative organization muzzles their players. Block Twitter on his computer. Give everybody else the passcode to get around the block and just say no to him. Do whatever you have to do. He's a good jungler. And SK looks very good in the last 3 games. Their big liability in the last 3 games of that group was Candy Panda.
But if you read did you read Jez's Facebook post about how basically because of Svenskeren he was mentally out of it the entire time, and how Svenskeren basically ruined the mentality of that entire team and was a chemistry disaster? That's the guy you want to bring back? If that's because here's the thing, it's also about sending a message to the the organization for players that they bring in, whatever else. That's who they want to stand behind. That's who they want to say, this is the guy that represents us. This is the guy we want on a big, in the LCS every day, representing us.
He's better than everybody.
Okay, but at some point you have to wonder, is he that much better than everybody else? And Svenskeren's good, but is he that good? Maybe
I
for
think there's a
now.
lot
I don't
of
know what
junglers
jungler's there, but sorry.
I don't think
there's a lot in the EU. You can replace them. I think you can replace them.
I
I mean,
think you
look
can
at
replace it too.
you could for sure.
Imperial's like one of the best shot callers in Europe. If you watch the stream,
You've got plenty of EU junglers coming back to EU.
yeah, you've got Dexter, you've got amazing. Like you can replace that guy so easy.
Maybe Dexter. Okay, you can.
I'm not going to go with
Amazing.
amazing guys, but that's another
And
story.
Europe, if he was okay in Europe.
But by the way, that's not their only problem. I mean, we got to talk about Incarnation and
Oh yeah.
the unholy storm of crap that just went on because of that. And there's a big debate on whether or not he should be unbanned right now.
Which is
The way I see it is this: if he hasn't been, Riot knows his accounts. There's montages of him. Riot knows his accounts.
This is like XJ9 status, guys. This is crazy.
No, a
I
little
wouldn't
bit.
say
But like,
XJ9 exactly.
let's say XJ9. Okay, this kid cheated to win. Is that terrible? Yes. But was he a teenager when he did it? Yes. Would you like to be held accountable to the things that you did when you were a teenager? No. So here's my
Why do we
theory:
have Groovy?
if Riot says he has not been reported more than your average player, if he is really reformed, 2 years is a long punishment that sends the message no other competitive player is going to try and DDoS because that's what happens. You don't want to get banned for life and you have to be perfect. So, and every pro account that I've heard of him says that he's reformed. So if that's lies and this discussion isn't even happening, I'll agree with everybody, keep him banned. But if he has reformed, what are we going to say? That we're going to punish this kid forever because of like a mistake that he made? Sure. Was he toxic? Sure. All these bad things. But if it's been 2 years of improved behavior, I want to see the top talent in the LCS. That's what I care about. Good games.
Here's my problem. It's not just a matter of being toxic. People are toxic all the time. It's an emotional response. They get angry, they get mad, they say horrible things. That's one thing.
Sure.
DDoS attacks are a deliberate action. You have to plan ahead of time. You have to learn how to use those scripts. You have to research your opponent's stuff, and you have to deliberately shut them down. And you have to do it repeatedly, as he did. He didn't do it once. He didn't do it twice. He did it repeatedly.
Well,
Here's a question of morals, right?
The DDoS.
Right, put us out. Right, see the cheating that happened in Season 2 Worlds where they looked at the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Is that any less cheating than DDoS?
You're talking about
Yes.
premeditated versus
Exactly.
That's the point is you guys are arguing opportunity
Is
versus
it any worse?
preparation.
But is it any worse?
Yes.
Do you think a DDoS attack is worse than a world championship, checking the big screen, seeing the map, seeing what's going on? Do you think that's worse?
Assuming no malice involved, yes. I believe if you're...
No malice? How can you look at the screen and not have malice? Like, what is where the enemy team is?
There's definitely malice involved.
No, they were just actually just very neutrally glancing at the screen, guys. Come on.
Look.
Like,
It wasn't even
do you
just
see a big
once.
difference?
It wasn't
There
just
was a
Woong
moral
either.
stance on it.
It was a bunch of like I remember there was being a string of reports of a bunch of Chinese players looking behind them during the games and when they were told not to and looking at the minimap. The reason that Woong was actually fine was because that look at the screen could have like been potentially a game-changing thing. The other ones were just coincidentally not game-changing. You don't think that's malicious?
Okay.
But yes,
That's fair. I tend to give benefit, like when you're on a big stage like that, when there's all the pressure on or whatever else, and there's a giant big flashing screen, I like to assume the best in people. Now, like you said, it happened enough times with those things. If you have it happen enough times that you can say there's no way it was an accident. Like one time, I feel differently. But if it's multiple times, yeah, that's deliberate. And yes, I would put that at the same level of a DDoS. I should have made that more clear.
Riot could solve this problem in the future by just doing the OGN thing where they're actually in booths.
Yeah, they could.
Well, they
What
could.
about-
Yes.
What
So-
a concept.
Hold on.
Well,
So
they-
let's go back to Incarnation for
But
this one
that's an
second.
old story. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's just go back there for 1 second. So do you really don't think that if he's been reformed for 2 years, you disagree with the statement? If he has been reformed for 2 years, hasn't DDoS anybody, hasn't been toxic, has been a good member of the community, and has been participating in the pro scene for free, basically, because he can't actually be contracted by any LCS thing, you think that he should continue to be barred from returning to something where he's arguably one of the biggest talent?
Or even as a coach. Remember, this is
Even
all
as a
about him.
coach, even as a coach too. You think that he should be completely barred from the scene despite his talent after 2 years of reformed activity?
And if he's really doing
I
it
think
for free,
his
I don't know
talent-
if he's doing it.
Let Chase answer. Let Chase answer.
Okay.
I want to hear this.
I think his talent should have nothing to do with whether we let him back in or not. The fact he should be treated like
Okay.
every other player. And
Fair.
every player, if you DDoS, it is a perma-ban. If you DDoS competitively, you are permanently banned because they say that is such a bad offense in their mind that
It's never been proven.
that
Though.
they ban it.
It's never been proven. Just.
But that's the
so-
precedent that they set.
It's
And if they
alleged.
want,
Well, he did
if they
admit it.
hold on,
He
he
admitted.
admitted to doing it.
No, he didn't. He admitted to doing it in
never-
games. He never admitted, actually admitted to doing it. He did it. He's him admitting to doing it are screenshots of him saying jokingly or maybe seriously, "I'm going to DDoS you," and then
He's
the game.
never actually.
I'm
he's
gonna
never took
give Riot the
responsibility.
benefit of the doubt and say that they have evidence on this. I'm gonna trust Riot's evidence before they made a perma ban of one of the most popular players that has ever played in Europe. But this is my point. If you want the message that you are sending, if you repeal this perma ban, is going to be, we are going to let you get away with things that we think are really heinous as long as you're really good. As long as your montages go up on YouTube and get thousands upon thousands of hits, we are going to forgive the worst thing that we can come up with, which is literally hacking through someone's ISP, which is malicious enough on its own, and then shutting them down.
It happens.
If
anyway.
you wanna-
Listen,
Don't bring the montages. That has
If
nothing to
this
do with reforming.
think
So-
about
so
think
you-
about this for a
so-
second.
If this was
No.
a random challenger dude, if this was just some guy and he wasn't the top player in Europe and he wasn't, he was just a guy that was in the top 100, top 200 of Europe, no one would be having this conversation.
But you know what? I would still think that after 2 years of reformed activity, you're dealing with kids.
Okay, I'll
Guys.
say this. Riot.
Let's let John go and then Steven go because otherwise we'll have everyone talking at once forever.
Look at this, right? Take a leaf out of the real justice systems book, okay? If you get a life sentence in jail, that can be reduced. That can be reduced by good behaviour and reforming, okay? So why should a murderer get out of jail sooner? That he's got a life sentence, he's not spending his full life in jail, he's spending maybe 20, 30 years. But someone who DDoSes in a game after 2 years can't get back to playing it, when he's changed as a person.
And 2 years is longer than the average pro career, right?
Riot doesn't run the prisons that I know of, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hyperbole there to compare.
I'm not saying you're wrong, John. I'm just pointing out
Yeah.
inconsistencies.
Yeah, he's right.
Two life sentences. That is 2 life sentences, a life ban and a life sentence in jail. It's the 2 of the same thing. It's just obviously the timescales are different. So, if we can do it in society, how can't we do it in this community?
It's a fair point.
He was also 15.
Yeah, I was actually gonna I was actually gonna mention that. Are you really gonna say that Riot as a company has prided themselves in how they deal with bad player behavior? And they always talk about, oh yeah, look, all these players who got banned at one point come back and they're better. They don't get banned again. They don't get reported as much again because they change. They become reformed. Yes, you can make the argument that he was permabanned, and that's a big difference than being banned, suspended, for 2 weeks, whatever. But are you gonna say that Riot, a company who prides themselves on player reformation, is going to not at least consider lifting a permaban on a 15-year-old kid who did this, who, by the way, if this was an actual criminal thing, kind of in real life kind of thing, who would have went to juvie, are you really going to say they would not even consider it? Yes, I can understand that repealing a decision like that can look bad, but it's a 15-year-old who has reformed, something that Riot has prided themselves in. You're gonna say that they're not even gonna consider it. They're not gonna open the debate.
I think 2 years is not. I would say 2 years isn't enough time. Personally, I think the DDoS attacks, the severity of them, and the multitude that we have says that 2 years is not enough for me. Riot is allowed to put whatever time frame they want, and if that's the decision they want to make, then that's fine. But DDoS attacks, compared to every other toxic level of behavior, they have told every single time, this is a permaban, this is unacceptable, we will never allow this in our community. More than toxic behavior, more than just being a jerk, more than saying cancerous threats, whatever else. They have said all of that can be reformed. But when it comes to this, when it comes to deliberately attacking someone through all these security measures and everything else, they have said that is unacceptable 100% of the time. And if that's unacceptable in the player base and it's acceptable on professional level, I think allowing that to say this is the thing, this is no longer at that unacceptable level, I think that sends a message. And if I'm Riot, I don't want to send that message. I understand
But I don't understand that logic. I don't understand that logic.
I put DDoSing above any other thing that a person can do.
But see what you're saying, right? That's fine. That's fine if it's online, but it's not online. They play at LAN. You can't DDoS at LAN.
And it's a 2-year ban. That's longer than any other ban they've been in.
He's not going to be practicing online. Like, that's a silly...
What's it going to DDoS scrims? What is it going to do? It's so bad.
If he hasn't DDoSed in 2 years, if he hasn't DDoSed in 2 years, isn't that enough time? Like, theoretically, isn't, like, what, like, is 3 years going to make it better? Like, 2 years is already longer than the average pro gamer in League's career. So, to say, like, that already is most people's life sentence. You know what I mean? Like, that is the life sentence of the pro gamer.
All right.
The last thing I'm going to say. Can I
go
make one
ahead,
last point?
Chase.
And then,
You have closing.
when Riot made that ban, they said that this was a behavior that was inexcusable, that could never come back from. That's why they said permanent. They could have said 2 years. They could have said whatever. They could have said with or from. They just said permanently banned. They said it because they believe that DDoS attacks are such a heinous crime in their mind within their player base that it is unforgivable. They want to go back on that? That's fine. But as of right now, they have not said that they would. And if they're going to do it just because this happens to be the guy who's making all the montage videos and whatever else, I think that's really poor reasoning. I think if you're going to do that, you've got to change the way you address DDoS attacks across the board, and you've got to change the entire mentality that you have given to your player base, to the forums, to everything else, because right now they've said this is unforgivable 100% of the time. And if they're changing it for this guy, they got to change it for everybody.
Now that we've beat this mutilated carcass that was once a horse, let's move on to the remainder of the ULCS roster swaps. We got Supa Hot Crew, and Impaler and Kasing are both out. I hadn't heard much about this news before today. I don't know how really well the organization handles a lot of the rosters. That was one of the least stable ones in Europe, throughout their tenure in the ULCS. What are you guys' takes on that?
The Impaler one shocked me. I thought he was fine. So I was kind of surprised that they got rid of him. I think that because they swapped, right? They left Acer and now they're going to be Meet Your Makers.
Which is crazy.
Which I don't understand. So there might be some management stuff going on. I mean, it's hard to say. Impaler was going to make a team with Alex Itch, but that already disbanded and fell through. That's no longer a thing. It was a thing last week, but it's not a thing this week.
Welcome to esports.
Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, because I just don't see them having the budget to compete. After Dexter and Amazing left CLG and TSM, like, how do you bring one of them in to Supa Hot Crew? How do you do that? Especially when, like we said, SK might consider replacing their jungle. Other teams might as well. It's definitely a possibility. So I don't know about Supa. I don't know what they're going to do. It'll be interesting to see, though.
Okay.
I just, the organization leaving Acer makes no sense. I think Impaler and Kazing were doing just fine. I think a lot of it comes down to Selfie. We know that he's a personality that he likes doing things his own way, and I think towards the end of that split, we saw that kind of come into fruition as far as some of that chemistry stuff was to be concerned. So it'll be interesting to see how much of an impact he kind of has and what players are coming around him, because it does seem like the players that we kind of heard rumors of him not getting along with before the playoffs were Impaler and Kazing, and guess what? They're gone. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of Selfie's friends kind of come into the mix here.
Well, there we go. Moving on down. I mean, there's a few other minor changes we can talk about, but I think the big ones that people really want to hear about, especially in the other regions, of course, we already know SKT released Piglet and Pumandu, and where they go is anybody's guess. Horo is out in SKTS, but of course, everyone wants to know where Kakao is going, and there's just been all we know is it's somewhere in China. That's it. There's been a lot of rumors about LGD. There have been a lot of other discussions. I mean, he's probably a hard man to afford. So I want to get your guys' take on where you think Kakao, and also where you think Rookie will end up.
Well, I want to aim this back at you, because you're the China person here. You cast LPL. So where's Kakao going? Tell us, friend.
All right, we've returned fire here. Okay, so Kakao, there are a lot of really solid junglers in the LPL, and Insect is kind of been up and down on that scale. He actually had a really less than stellar debut on Starhorn Royal Club, because he would go in 1v5 and his team, which didn't speak Korean, would be like, what are you doing? But then they obviously solved those problems because you can't make worlds by diving 1v5 unless your name is Uzi I. So Kakao could go a number of places. I think where most in need of talent might be, I mean, people have talked about LGD. Chuen is clearly a weak link on that team, but I just don't see that changing because they're kind of a band of brothers sort of team. The leader of that team is their support, PYL. They're like best friends. I know Chuen has been kind of saying it on his Weibo and saying, "Oh, I'm out, I'm gone." I'm pretty sure he's trolling because that's what they do on their streams is they just troll. It's not so different, right? I think there was an argument to be made for Invictus Gaming because Illusion, the jungler there, had kind of an up and down season. He played a lot of interesting, strange picks. That's another thing that people don't really know necessarily about China, is that the jungle, especially meta there, is very, very different. And for example, Skarner was actually very popular for a little while after his rework, and Illusion was a big part of that. Not a lot of teams could probably afford it, but then again, a lot of them are very well bankrolled, so you never know when something like that's going to come out. If I had to guess, I'd say it's either Invictus Gaming or maybe one of the up and coming teams, Snake or King, who are coming up out of the expansion. So the LPL, for those people that don't know, LPL is still, they're expanding to 2 more teams just like the LCS is, and there will also of course be a few teams swapping it out. World Elite Academy and Young Glory both finished bottom of the table, and they were the new teams in, and other teams will be taking their place as well. So that's all going to happen coming up. But Rookie, I don't think anyone really mentioned him about going to China in particular. There are a surprising number of good mid laners there, and I think he might have better opportunities in EU or NA, to be honest.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, he can go anywhere. Rookie's a pretty great player.
Korea's such a mess right now. I mean, nobody knows for sure what's going on with that 2-team to 1-team thing. Is that happening? Is it not happening? No, it seems to be happening, but no one really knows for sure. And I mean, if it does happen, that's going to create a massive amount of roster changes in the West and everywhere because there's going to have so much more of these Korean players who are displaced, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
it's got just more than that too. I mean, Swift is out, although a lot of people have argued that maybe CJ is the one organization that really does need to coalesce their rosters.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
They have a good team.
Are like
they have a good team
completely, everybody on the generic Falcons are just gone. No more ganked by mom. I know, it's really sad.
That is a trap. He had the best name.
He did have the best name in OGN.
Best name in all of League of Legends.
I don't know, man. Jeff in the GPL was my favorite personally. I was a big fan of Jeff. He held his own for what was he? It was the team that ended up having to disqualify because Jeff wasn't 17, and they found out.
I was a Starhorn fan back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I like Rookie more than I think a lot of people do. People forget that this was his first year of any kind of experience, and for him to perform as well as he did on the Arrows by the end of OGN summer, given that this is his first year, I think he's got a lot of upside. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some of these Korean. I think there might be a place in Korea left for him. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, sure. I think it'll be interesting to see. I do think Blaze, and as an old Blaze fan from season 2, I hate to say it, but it would be really nice for them to just revamp that entire thing because, I mean, man, if
they could afford to buy Kakao, they could become the Avengers.
Return of
I would be so happy. That would be my dream literally come true.
That would be CJ winning champions. Well, maybe not, but they'd be pretty
a
solid.
Scary team.
Yeah, they would. And then SKT disbands and they pick up Faker. Like that, like, did anyone else read that crazy Reddit post that was like,
yes,
literally like Kakao is just masterminding this like super team?
Again?
That was like the best thing I've read on Reddit in a long time.
I remember reading that. Kakao is the mastermind of Korea to begin with.
Mm-hmm. All right, but back to China. I completely drove this train off the rails, but everyone knows World Elite. Wei Xiao, one of the most legendary AD carries of all time. Hello, IPL 5. I don't care if you think Reckless was better. He wasn't. Cao Mei is also gone off that team. Axine, who was a Korean player that was noted for being on the AHQ Korea team, and we all know how that ended. He's gone just because he didn't really perform up to standards. So right now their current roster they still have Conan, and the support role. They still have Ninja in the mid, but I think they wanted to get rid of him. They made an offer to Messiah.
To come back?
To come back. And
Yeah,
he was
Messiah's
like,
coming
screw
back.
you guys.
Uh,
Like, so World Elite has a whole lot of changes going forward. I have no idea where they're going to be next year. They're probably the least certain thing. They actually were doing really, really well. This is really sad because they had a really good chance to make that third place spot, but because of like the tiniest margins, they actually lost out on like the third like tiebreaker in the rule book to get that third spot in the LPL. I believe it was the LPL summer playoffs. So they lost out. Sorry, the fourth spot. They lost out to LGD because they had the same number of win-losses, the same head-to-head matchups, but they won their games in more time. And according to LPL rules, the team that wins in less time in that particular chain of events makes it. So they lost out, and that was when Salma and Weijia retired. I know, right?
Yep.
Talk about a bad day.
Why not just have them play
Oh my god.
a tiebreaker?
That
Why not have
reminds
them-
me.
Because this is the LPL rules. This
Yeah.
was actually in their rulebook. They did not pull this out of their ass.
Do you
I swear to God.
Actually, that reminds me. Does
I
anyone
remember
here
that.
remember the rule?
That's awesome.
In OGN spring last year, there was a game between, I think it was IM2 versus HQ. And I don't remember which team it was. One of those teams got aced and then they surrendered. But because they surrendered after that, White Shield won the tiebreaker or something.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
no, I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly.
it's really
what
weird
happened.
how all this.
It was
how
like
all this
it was like a
interacts.
KDA per second thing, and had they surrendered before the fight, they would have gotten out of group stages through the tiebreaker. It was really weird. I don't remember the rule. I have to look this up after we're done.
Okay.
But that was
Well, I'll touch on one more China
Yeah,
thing because
was
this is my
spring.
ranting. But
it was spring.
go
I know
ahead,
it was
Chase.
spring, but I don't remember exactly
yeah,
what
2013.
happened.
Okay.
2013 spring.
The only other roster change that's even really talked about much is OMG's support, who had already kind of been switched around a lot. I know everybody got to experience the wonderful
Free Cloud.
play that was not a 777, and that moved over into Cloud. Who so OMG, for everyone that wasn't entirely familiar with them, was a team that they are actually one of like the driving strategical forces in the LPL. Like everyone always talks about Chinese aggression, right, and how they don't think, they just dive. Well, that's changing, but OMG was never really that team. I mean, they did a lot of aggressive moves, but they always had a lot of calculated play going into it. Their pick ban phase was better than most in China. The biggest problem was, and their biggest weak point was always their bot lane. So Cloud was picked up off of solo queue about, I want to say, in the spring, I think. And he was really, really good, but he had a really bad temper, apparently. And they decided to bring in Dada because Pomelo didn't want to play support. He was busy doing other things. Apparently, Loveling they just wanted him in the jungle more. And he's a fantastic jungler, so, of course. But they have no depth at support, and Cloud was their best bet. But, you could see what happened in those games against Starhorn Royal Club where they just completely fell apart after what was very obviously Cloud doing something and the team wanting to do something else.
Yeah, that game 3 ending was just so rough to watch.
I cried. I cried.
It was like a slow motion, just the no stuff. Like you could just tell it was going to go wrong.
You just see them rotating, and you're like, oh, but the Royal Club is spawning. Why are you? No, why? No,
With
don't
the poke
siege.
comp.
Don't siege. Don't know. What do you? No, why? Oh my God! It was just.
They don't even
It was-
run poke comps. Okay, I'm gonna shut up because I've completely killed that topic with several
Oh,
people.
cool.
But
I appreciate it. It's
that's the roster swaps so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I could. AHQ made a couple changes. They basically decided, hey, Westor and Green Tea are the only players that were good, so bye everybody else. Pride, you can be our coach. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. They're kind of GPLs splitting between Vietnam and everything else, which hopefully. Honestly,
All I know about the GPL is that Vietnam's gonna get like 6 teams or something like that. I really don't.
Yeah, Vietnam it's splitting into 2 separate regions. Vietnam's going to have 6 teams, and then there's going to be 6 teams in the other one. And it's Honestly, I really appreciate it because right now Vietnam is just so far ahead just from sheer infrastructure than every other team in the GPL. And the problem is
Aside from Taiwan.
Because, Taiwan and
Vietnam.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Those are the two power regions, and everything else kind of does its own thing. So separating it, I think it makes sense in the long run. It'll be interesting to see kind of how it all ends up working. But I'm honestly, as far as the GPL is concerned, until they have LAN events for their big tournaments, they're never good at.
Okay. Yeah. I mean that's pretty much it, guys. I think I'm going to leave everyone to do their shout-outs. I know John is busy taking care of other business, but do you guys want to say anything before we wrap this up?
Well, sure. First of all, the shout out to you for coming up and filling in the guest host in our time of need.
I
hope I did Amber justice.
You did good, sir. You did.
Thank you.
Thomas is out crying somewhere in the courtroom because he has jury duty.
Oh, that's fun.
Poor soul.
Yeah, that's never fun. But yeah, just as usual, shout out to everybody who watches this live. We really appreciate it. Shout out to everybody who watches the VOD of this. We also really appreciate it. Leave your comments. Give them to us. Follow all the Paravine channels. Follow everybody here. They're awesome. Just the usual.
We love talking to you guys. We love interacting with you guys. So please let us know. And as free agency stuff comes out, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more articles coming your way about our thoughts and feelings about how everything's shaping up. And don't forget, obviously, expansion tournament's coming up soon. So get excited for a whole bunch of crazy hypotheticals. So should be a lot of fun.
That will be fun.
All right, there we are. John, do you have anything else to shout out to anyone before we go?
No shout out. Sorry, I just had to nip out there.
Fine.
Just thanks for having me on, yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. That's our show. Please go ahead and check the VOD when it does come out. And, of course, tune in next week for more of the same. More of the most awesome. Thank you guys for being the wonderful panelists. Thank you, Paravine, for having me as a guest host. And, of course, you've been watching Into the Rift. We'll be back next week. Same time. See you later.
Big kiss. Mwah.